for the watch, an X-Man achievement and declared that that was easy. They don't see all the struggle and all the failure.
6:17 in Trinidad and Tobago. Well, let's start our discussion in relation to COVID-19 because it is something that has dominated conversation for a year and a half and will dominate for quite some time because it's about public health. It's about health and wellness. It's about saving lives. So obviously it will be of paramount consideration. And the fight continues. It's far from over. Locally, the active cases are now up to 6,015. Yesterday, the Ministry of Health, in their usual update, reported 318 new cases and 8 additional deaths over the preceding 24-hour period. Well, let's get the perspective of representatives of the Medical Association of Trinidad and Tobago on our handling of the virus, the potential impact of the Delta variant. Yesterday, of course, marked 1 year and 5 months since our first COVID case. Since then, we've had the P1 variant and now the arrival of the Delta variant by 2 unvaccinated returning nationals. Joining us are Dr. Vishy Bihari, President of the Medical Association, and also Dr. Hariharan Setharaman, Professor of Anesthesia and Critical Care Medicine, but also a huge cricket fan, especially when India were playing. And given that is the land of his birth, it's perfectly understandable. Even I was trying to provoke him into a comment about the West Indies versus Pakistan. He's preoccupied with India versus England at Lord's. And I could tell the professor, he won't be too happy with this, that India have already lost a couple of wickets this morning. So they are now 5 wickets down at 273. But we'll get to the professor in a moment. Good morning to you, gentlemen. Thanks very much for joining us. Dr. Bihari, just give us your assessment of where we are right now, given the arrival of a couple of things, the Delta variant, Pfizer vaccines in significant numbers, Sinopharm in significant numbers, AstraZeneca is here. So, Dr. Bihari, good morning to you. To use a cricketing analogy, give us the state of play as you see it.
Good morning, Fazira, and thank you for having us once again. Certainly some interesting developments. The Delta variant, of course, none of us really wanted it to come here, though we all knew it is inevitable. What is significant to mention about Delta variant is that it was identified in unvaccinated individuals, and that for us in the Medical Association is a key point to note. We still have a significant portion of our population unvaccinated, and we take note that this Delta variant had shown up in unvaccinated individuals. So that is where we must make the connection between severity of illness or contracting the Delta variant and being unvaccinated. And we continue to encourage people to get vaccinated. You made a couple other points about the arrival of vaccines, the Pfizer vaccines, the Sinopharm vaccines in stock, and even the AstraZeneca vaccine donation. Prior to the arrival of these things, the vaccines and the Delta variant, the uptake was a bit slow. We, as you know, the Medical Association is involved in the management of the vaccine site at the Diwali Nagar, and we have seen for almost 10 days prior to that, dropping numbers of persons coming for the vaccine as low as 114 on one given day, with a maximum of about 600 on other days. And that for us was very concerning. We felt that we have reached a point of hesitancy. But then once these vaccines have arrived, the AstraZeneca in particular, then we saw a surge in the number of persons coming for the vaccine. And then it gave the impression that perhaps some people were waiting. And then there was the discussion about brand preference. Accepting that there's brand preference and understanding that some people prefer certain vaccines over others, we welcome this initiative of rushing for the AstraZeneca vaccine now, because in our minds, it meant more persons would now be vaccinated. And the hope was that we could get some more people vaccinated before Delta arrived. That is why we continued to support the running of that vaccination site, as well as encourage other sites and send volunteers to other sites to get more and more people vaccinated. So that continues to be our goal, to support and encourage the population to be vaccinated, despite the fact that Delta is here. if we could push and get more people vaccinated, then we should be able to lessen the impact of Delta in terms of overwhelming our healthcare system. If it really creates a surge and a fourth wave, for want of a better phrase, in the coming weeks and months. The Pfizer vaccine arrival, I think there's a lot said about it. It is certainly welcome at this point in time, having more than enough vaccines and not having to decide who can get it and who can't get it. And there's at least one brand available for every person who so chooses to get the vaccine. It's certainly a welcome initiative. I think we must consider our population of persons under 18 years old. While they have not been able to be vaccinated before, I think having the Pfizer vaccines and administering it to people between 12 and 18 is quite important in terms of us achieving herd immunity, because a significant portion of that population will be moving and circulating, given that things have reopened now and school reopening is near on the horizon. So it is certainly a welcome initiative, and we definitely support vaccinating as much people as we can, especially even kids between 12 and 18 years old.
And Professor, if I could get your perspective as well, and just picking up from where Dr. Bihari's point about the Pfizer vaccines, and from what we understand, the Pfizer vaccine is the only one with WHO approval for children 12 years and over, age 12 and over, and of course we're taking into consideration all of the issues related to the reopening of school if it actually happens. What is your perspective on that? Are you cautious? Are you in any way concerned as to a potential surge with the arrival of Delta variant, even with all of these vaccine options available? Good morning to you, Professor.
Good morning, Fazil. Thank you. Thanks for having me. The idea is that Pfizer should be reserved. I mean, I know Vichy also said about this, the so-called brands and the preference and so on and so forth. People tend to think this is like a university student marks, that somebody gets 93, they are in A+, and so something like that. You know, that is not the truth. Pfizer is currently approved. As the Pfizer and the Moderna, the only mRNA vaccines are approved because we have the data from children about 12 years old, and they form a very, very sizable amount in the population. So to achieve that so-called 80% or 85% vaccination, to achieve herd immunity, to stop transmission. Okay, we are now, with the vaccination, we can stop the severe illness. People landing up in ICU where we have to, struggle with people on a ventilator. That will be stopped by any vaccine for that matter. And again, to use a cricketing analogy, I will tell you that, when Tendulkar comes in onto bat, everybody thinks that he has to have a century or a very high score. But the Delta variant, I'll tell you one thing. Yesterday, New England Journal of Medicine, August 12th, has released a paper, published a paper on the efficacy of vaccines for the Delta variant specifically. And I mean that 93% is still not holding on for that particular Pfizer vaccine. Even when they introduced it, it was in the 90s, 94, 95. Everybody started saying that. So the efficacy is not the number. How much percentage it is going to work. No, the efficacy means that in that particular match or the first trial, how much runs the vaccine scored. The second match now, which with the Delta variant, where the bowlers are different, the virus itself is different, is a Delta variant, which is much more transmissible. The efficacy has fallen down. Mayo Clinic study actually, is further less than that, for the same Pfizer vaccine. But what I wanted to say is the good news is that nobody scores a duck. No vaccine has been scoring a duck. Every single vaccine has reached that threshold to develop immunity. to develop antibodies as well as T cell immunity. And there is very clear evidence now. You know that 3 billion vaccines. I haven't met you for a long time. The initial time when you were asking me about the first arrival of AstraZeneca and so on and so forth during January, February. Now, 3 billion people have been vaccinated with different brands. And currently, there is enough real world evidence that the pandemic, the virus, is actually still there only because of unvaccinated individuals. Every day I go through the scientific studies. There is enough comparison with very, very large sample size because of the 3 billion population, and they sift out the data, and they have established that all brands of vaccine definitely prevents severe illness. Infection, to prevent the transmission, it varies. And especially with the Delta variant is highly transmissible. But the good news is that it has not completely evaded the vaccine, any vaccine for that matter. I will tell you that, in July, Sri Lanka published their data using Sinopharm for the Delta variant. And it was, in their group of study, it was 90%. What I'm trying to say is, it's like every single country, every situation is different, and the number, when first number which actually was used for approval of the FDA, those were controlled conditions in a phase 3 trial, and so that need not always stay. The good news is that every single vaccine is preventing severe infection, and now the pandemic is of the unvaccinated. I don't know how people are getting these fancy ideas about the efficacy, about the conspiracy theory about our DNA code is going to be changed, and the same type of vaccines we actually gave for our children when they were babies. My son, I gave Sinopharm. He has to go to UK for the university, but I wanted to protect him. I mean, I don't mind if he has to go and stay there in a quarantine if they don't recognize. That is vaccine imperialism. We can't. That is political decision. But scientific decision is that any vaccine is good to protect ourselves as well as to protect the community. So the efficacy is all the first match when the vaccine was introduced. After that, subsequent matches with a different change in the bowlers and different change in the variants of the virus, the efficacy level, the run scores are changing, and I am seeing that every day. And if I say the Mayo Clinic, study, it will actually, it can be counterproductive. That's why I'm not saying anything. All that I'm trying to say is that all vaccines are efficacious to prevent severe illness. And also, if we continue to vaccinate ourselves and achieve that 80 to 85%, including the Pfizer will be very good for the children. And so all this myocarditis, I saw yesterday, my son was showing me in the social media. I don't even know whether people know what is myocarditis. These are adverse effects we have to report, and so they have to report it. Not one case has been reported to have been a mortality following the myocarditis, or a long-term they developed a cardiac failure or anything like that. They were all mild myocarditis, and then they completely resolved, 100% resolved. It's like a fever and they resolve. So, I mean, people get all these information and form their own opinions. I must say that, we need to debunk all these misconceptions. The right way to end this pandemic is to vaccinate, because the wrong way is to actually allow the Delta variant to infect people and unvaccinated people, and again fill up our hospitals and ICUs. and lose so many lives, which are preventable deaths.
Indeed, and Professor, before we go to the break, maybe you've touched on a very good thing. I mean, it might sound light-hearted, but your cricketing analogy, maybe we should brand the vaccines the Lara or the Tendulkar, or as in Sri Lanka, call it the Jayasuriya, or in Jamaica, call it the Usain Bolt, and people might look at it differently. But let's take a break, because there are a number of issues here. Indeed, the question of booster shots has come into the discussion as well, where international agencies are urging countries not to necessarily take the booster shots before ensuring that the entire world is properly vaccinated first. But we say Israel has started booster shots, and are we going to go down that road as well? But let's take a break, and indeed let's take a water break, to use that cricketing analogy once again, and we'll return to our dialogue. We might be smiling and putting some light-hearted banter in it, but it's a very serious issue, this issue of vaccine efficacy and debunking all of the myths and misconceptions and so on. And indeed, as we go to that break, let's give you the reminder of the COVID-19 protocols. Wear a mask over the nose and mouth when you go out in public. Keep your distance from others, at least 6 feet. Stay home if you're ill. Wash your hands often with soap and water, or use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer. Cough into a tissue, into the crook of your elbow. Avoid touching your face, and of course sanitize those hard surfaces. Tabletops, handrails, doorknobs, trolleys and cell phones as often as possible. We'll be back after this break with our two medical professionals. .36 in Trinidad and Tobago. We still have a few minutes left with our two medical professionals, representatives of the Medical Association of Trinidad and Tobago, just giving us the lay of the land, the state of play in relation to the availability of vaccines and where we are at. Let's return to Dr. Vishy Bihari, President of the Medical Association. As far as the booster shots, Doc, what's your perspective on that? Because again, we're seeing it happening internationally, where countries who feel that they've achieved the level of herd immunity are now administering booster shots, even as I think it was either the WHO, one of the international agencies, have advised that, look, priority should be given to those countries and those citizens in countries who have not been fully vaccinated in the first place. Is this something that is inevitably going to happen to us in Trinidad and Tobago as well, that after being fully vaccinated, you're going to have booster shots as time goes by and as the virus mutates?
At some point, we may have to consider it. At the end of the day, remember, we are only, as you said earlier, 1 year and 5 months into this pandemic in our country, and worldwide, it's just over 18 months. So research is ongoing as we are learning new things about the vaccines and the efficacy, about the virus, about the variants, how the variants behave. As time go on, scientists will indicate or show different things happening. And at this point in time, there is information out there that indicates that perhaps boosters may be required. But I would say for our country, we have not reached that point of being able to offer boosters as yet. It really doesn't make much sense to offer a booster when a significant portion of your population is unvaccinated, more than 50%. We really should be achieving herd immunity before even considering a booster shot. That will also give us some more time to see what exactly is the extent or need for a booster and how long after it's required. Initially, some scientists were suggesting 6 months for a booster, some suggesting 1 year. So only time will allow us to figure out how long after we should be given a booster. And for us in this country, I think it will be best to have that time to be able to at least get unvaccinated people vaccinated.
I hear you on that, Dr. Bihari. If you'd allow me to come in, and before I go across to Professor for another point of view, the point I was trying to get at is that, yeah, I understand the point that you're making. Obviously, you want to achieve a level of vaccination of the entire population before you go to the route of boosters. But is this something that we will more or less have to consider now as a new normal, that having had the country, whenever we reach that, if we reach that, the level of herd immunity, that subsequent to that, it will become the norm to have booster shots? That is what I was trying to get at.
It may be very, 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 very likely that we will have to consider that. We are still learning about this virus, and just like flu shots, it may very well be that we have to consider boosters.
And Professor, if your own view on that, because some people again, you know, with all of the vaccine hesitancy, which might still be an issue, with all of the conspiracy theories. In fact, our next segment right after yours is going to be about alternatives to COVID-19, which might be very interesting for you to listen to or watch if you have the time. But what is your own view as to whether or not people will eventually get either tired or frustrated with always having to deal with some sort of vaccination or booster in relation to COVID-19, that people will just get fed up after a while, Professor?
No, I must say that coronaviruses are different by their behavior. I mean, we have studied this. The SARS-CoV-1 came and the MERS, Middle East Respiratory Syndrome came, and it offered a long-term immunity. So I am not still convinced that it will be like influenza shots. At this point of time, there are lots and lots of studies going on for the requirement of the booster shot. The only known group of patients who may be benefited, and that too because of their reduction in the amount of the antibody titers in their blood, are the immunocompromised people who are already on some sort of a immunosuppressant drugs. Those are the only group where they have advised 3 to 6 months a booster shot. At this point of time, there is no clear evidence that everybody will require a booster shot, because the way the T cell immunity is being developed, it's a long-term cell-mediated immunity is being developed for these vaccines. All the vaccines, I must tell you, they are behaving exactly like measles vaccines, which will offer protection for 25-30 years minimum and counting still. So that is the behavior which we are seeing scientifically. So just by antibody titer alone, we shouldn't be carried away by that. The antibody titer is important to actually prevent the outbreak, the transmission, and so on and so forth. But the long term, I am very confident that because of the coronavirus behavior, we will have long-term immunity.
And before we go quickly, Professor, if I could just get one final perspective on you from that. Is it possible, and I'm just speculating here, is it possible that, notwithstanding what you've said about the long-term protection, that the virus could mutate to such an extent that it will require maybe not so much a different type of vaccine, but a variant to meet that mutation?
That is I must say that has a 95+% probability, because the longer the virus stays in the population, the mutation will be much stronger. But the good news is that both the adenovirus vector vaccine, which is our AstraZeneca Johnson type of vaccine, as well as the mRNA vaccines, the technology is very easy, that within a week we can actually create an antigen from the mutated virus and prepare a vaccine, because we have everything now studied and kept ready, and the technology is very, very, very very advanced, that we can easily pick up those mutant varieties and put it into a vaccine. So that particular thing which you are saying, because of the mutation, we will have a different type of a vaccine, which is very easy with the current technology.
Well, Professor, I want to thank you very much again for taking the time, Dr. Bihari as well. And let me do you the favor, Professor, of updating you on the cricket score. India 298 for 5 with Rishabh Pant on 19, Ravindra Jadeja on 1. 2 wickets lost this morning from the overnight position of 276 for 3. So we'll see how things go. Thank you very much as well, Professor, and Dr. Bihari as well, for taking the time to be with us this morning. We do appreciate your informed perspectives. And as we go to the break, here are a couple images captured in the west on the Churchill Roosevelt Highway, sent to us by Avril Kerr. And for many people, in the evening, driving westwards, you probably see some really spectacular sunsets. Don't take your eyes off the road, of course, but I'm sure many of you might see some sunsets that you wish you could safely pull to the side and capture properly. And we thank Ms. Kerr for presenting us with these images as we go to the break.
I said that I am the seed of the seed of